These questions are from the members here. They've done their homework, and
All right.
I'm going to read the question. This question comes from Elena Evans from Ben Franklin High School. What are you proposing to change that will provide revenue for our city other than privatization of public utilities?
Oh, ouch. I do believe that funding for our schools, Harrisburg has a responsibility to fund our schools. But I also recognize that we have gone that route year after year after year, and they've continued to give us no money, but instead give us the ability to tax ourselves and make us uncompetitive in other ways. I believe that there's other ways to fight that fight in Harrisburg, first by understanding why it is that legislators across the state don't want to vote for the funding, and I think they have some legitimate concerns. Primarily, why would they raise taxes to send a school district in Philadelphia with no guarantee that it ever makes it to the classroom? So better understanding, almost forensic style audit to make sure we know where every penny is going, to make sure as much gets into the classroom to support our teachers, is where I'd start, and I'd continue to fight that fight in Harrisburg. Beyond that, we have to be prepared to make tough choices here at home, and there's all sorts of things. I'd be looking at pilots, payments in lieu of taxes for eds and meds, which are typically tax exempt. They don't pay taxes, but they expand in the neighborhoods like private developers, and I think there's some room there for exploration of that idea. I'd like to keep the city of Philadelphia open a little later and use the additional resources, perhaps, to send that to classrooms. It may not be the full answer, but it can be part of the answer. Privatizing utilities or public assets, I'm not a fan of, but I do have a bigger problem with allowing kids to move from one grade to the next without an education. And I will make whatever sacrifice and tough decisions necessary to make sure that the money gets here.
Thank you. The next question comes from Dan DiMartino from Juniata Park. And the question is, do you think the SRC should be dissolved? And if so, should we select or elect members of the governing body?
I began to touch on that briefly. I think that the SRC should, I come from PGW, Philadelphia Gas Works, and we have a regulator, the PUC. And they don't care whether you're municipally owned or privately owned. They don't care about natural gas vehicles or combined heat and power. They say you will deliver gas safely. And that's their number one concern. And I think that the SRC should function more like a regulator than an operator and concern themselves less with pencils in classrooms and more with guaranteeing that there's a quality educational choice in every single neighborhood across the city. So the form and what SRC does, I would shift that way. Again, this is the one point where I'm negotiable with respect to what the final outcome is, but if there's going to be a school board, I like having it appointed. Here's why. We can hold the mayor accountable for his two choices. We can hold the governor accountable for his or her two choices, or for his two choices. And ultimately, the 5 people who sit on that board, we can get to by electing or unelecting, voting out the person who put them there if we don't like the choices or the appointments or the decisions that are being made. If you had an elected board, then if you have a problem, you got to get 5 or 7, however many people are there, out. So again, I like the shift to have 3 appointed by the mayor rather than 2. And again, it's really about creating lines of accountability and keeping Harrisburg at the table so we can keep their feet to the fire with respect to getting the funding that we need.
Thank you. The next question is from Erwin Richardson from Carnell Elementary. And the question is, what will you do to keep public education in Philadelphia thriving?
That's a broad question. For me, one of the things that I hope comes out of this mayor's race, and you'll hear me talk a lot about engaging young folks, exercising their voice. People always say, well, Doug, what's your big idea for solving the city's problems or your big idea for solving the school's problems? And I guess my big idea is simple. It's focusing on the future, addressing the decades-long challenges that the city faces, that the school district faces by engaging kids again, speaking positivity to them, showing as an example of what they can do if they just put their minds to it, asking them not to give up, not allowing the failures of adults to be taken out on the lives of kids who can grow up and be whatever it is that they want to be. I'd like to bring more activities for our young students. One of the things that kept me in line all through school was sports. I wanted to play sports and extracurricular activities, whether sports or otherwise, making sure that those resources are available for our students so we can use them to encourage them. We don't always have to use a stick. Sometimes we can use a carrot. And I would do everything I could as a mayor to speak that positivity and be a visible mayor. Be in the schools, talk to the parents, engage the parents, invest in the parents and the students to get the school district to where it needs to be.
The next question is from Amy Roach. And the question is, City Council passed a resolution about standardized testing. What role do you think standardized tests play in evaluating students and teachers? What do you think about opt-out?
I never really liked tests that much. I don't want to say that there's no value in them, but the analogy that I use is that I don't have to go see my doctor every single day to know whether or not I'm healthy. And I think that an over-reliance on standardized tests may be unnecessary, and it spends, I think, teachers' times in ways that aren't necessarily proven or productive. I do believe that some benchmarking is important, and coming up with what we should be testing for should be where we spend most of our time. And I'm a fan of looking at the jobs and careers that we as a city are going to try and attract and training for those rather than for an antiquated system is probably a better use of time. I'd also like to see us spend more time on entrepreneurship and pushing people towards creating their own lives rather than the old model of trying to force feed people into a career where they work for 30 years and then get a pension. Like, let's start to speak to the creativity and the entrepreneurial spirit that all of our kids have, and I'd like to see us start testing for those. And what those tests look like, I can negotiate. I'm wide open.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Doug Oliver for coming this evening. Thank you, Doug.